Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tori if you're new here, and today we are talking some food shortage predictions for the month of February and beyond. If you're new here, hi, hello, my name is Tori. I run Mountain Mama Living and we do prepared life on a budget. So from time to time, I like to bring you some chats I like to have with local community members, and I encourage you to do the same. I will say I'm pretty introverted when it comes to that part of my life, but chatting with local farms and small businesses is really something that I'm passionate about, and I think it really lends a hand into what's happening with the world today. So if you like that kind of thing, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up, and let's get right into this. So these last couple weeks, we've been out and about to some farms around my area that I haven't frequented in a little bit. So we went to our local dairy, we went to another grain mill, we went to our local farm stand that just happens to do CSA programs. So we do get a lot of our produce from there. We have a small garden here, but it's just not enough to sustain our family throughout the entire year. So I really do enjoy purchasing from those local farms so I can preserve food for the family at a low cost with some real ingredients, and at the same time we are supporting someone local. So I always like to start these videos by saying that of course every area is going to be different. I encourage you to go out and talk to some of your local shop owners. Maybe even some larger grocery stores would know some information on this, but I tend to try and go directly to the source. That's just my preference. That's what works for my family. And I have a big list here, and I've actually gone online and kind of cross-referenced, and some of those things are on some online forums as well. So sometimes they match up, sometimes they don't. Again, it really depends on where you are in the world. So in today's video, I'm going to do it like we did it last time. I'm going to mention the shortage, and then I'm going to mention some ways that you can work around that shortage. And I hope that was helpful for everyone. Again, we are a family on a budget, so this isn't something to break the bank, but quality ingredients is extremely important to me. I would prefer to be 100% self-sustainable. I just don't see that happening fully, but I can try my best, right? So number one on the list is going to be butter, and that was from my local dairy. It's an organic dairy up the road here, and they supply to some larger chains, but they do have a CSA program for dairy, which I was really intrigued about. I've never heard of anything like that, and it's more of a smaller scale operation, and they don't advertise it, but I just got to talking to one of the workers and their wives, and then they directed me to the wife of the farmer that runs everything. So it was really great to talk to her, and she was talking about butter and how that would be a shortage. You know, there are many reasons why that would be a shortage. I don't really go into that too deeply on this channel, but I want to provide you solutions, ways that you can get around that. And sometimes it can be a shortage, sometimes it can be something that will just skyrocket in price. So we're beating food shortages and we're trying to beat inflation. And a lot of people use butter. Some people choose not to, which is fine. I ate a plant-based lifestyle for a very long time, so I get that. There are other things besides butter that you can use in recipes, and we will go over that here in a second. But I want to talk about butter itself, if it goes up in price. And we tend to get the grass-fed butter as much as we can, and sometimes we buy that locally, but a lot of the time it's cheaper for us to buy at Costco or Sam's Club. The Kirkland brand we just started buying, it's a little cheaper than Kerrygold, which is what we prefer, but grass-fed butter for pregnancy, which I am pregnant with my third, and grass-fed butter for growing humans is always good in my kitchen. So I think that's really important to have. Of course, it's going to cost a little bit more, but if you can, I suggest trying to get that. It's just a great fat source that you can have. So we're gonna go over some preferences and some personal decisions that I would make in the event I went to the grocery store and I could not afford that butter. The first thing I would do is look around for some raw milk in my area. And if that wasn't possible, which that's happened once or twice this month, you know, if that wasn't possible, if those prices were too high, I would get grocery store-bought, wherever I can find it, heavy whipping cream. Regular whipping cream works as well. Just heavy cream, essentially. And you can do that with raw milk. I'm not going to go into that with you today. You can look up how to do that. But if you don't have access to raw milk, which a lot of people don't, a lot of people are afraid to talk about that topic, Again, we're not going to go into that, but if you can't get your hands on that, head to the grocery store and find some good quality organic heavy cream. And what you're going to do is blend that up in a mixer, or if you don't have a mixer, or maybe you're off grid, or maybe you just want to save some money on power, you can shake it in a mason jar. And you will see after about 6 or 7 minutes on a whisk setting, I like to use a whisk with my KitchenAid, it will start to separate. So what you want is that buttermilk to separate, and you will start seeing the butter solid separate, and that's what you want. So from there, you're going to take that out, and I put it in a strainer, and I try and get all of the liquid out of there, and then you can put it in whatever mold you want to. I have some Polish ties, and they have these really beautiful molds that you can find just about anywhere. I'd suggest looking at Etsy, and they have these intricate designs, but of course that's not necessary. I just put mine in my smaller glass Pyrex dishes and go from there. I like to keep it in the refrigerator, but you don't have to. You could add salt. I really enjoy adding garlic and rosemary. I have some dried garlic and rosemary from the garden last year, and it's just amazing and tasty on some fresh baked bread. But that is an option. You can make your own butter. If you want to see a demo on that, I can show you. I'm not the cleanest in the kitchen. I tend to get messy, but making butter is very, very simple. It can be cheaper. It depends. It depends if you shop your sales or not. But in the event that you cannot obtain butter, or maybe your butter is too expensive, look for some heavy cream. Other options for butter are going to be some alternatives if you need it for baking or something like that. Of course, you could substitute oils. You could find some shelf-stable ghee. I really enjoy unrefined cold pressed coconut oil with a butter flavor, and that's shelf stable, so I always have that in my prepper pantry. I just did a tour, so if you want to check out that video, it is in my emergency preparedness videos, or it's the last video I did, so you can look at that as well. But there are different options for butter. I don't think consuming butter is absolutely necessary for a human to thrive, but a lot of people enjoy it. A lot of people bake with it, and it's a classic. So if it's out of your price range for the month, I totally understand that, and there are ways to get around that. So I hope that was helpful. I try not to mumble on with my words or anything, but I do apologize in advance. I kind of get going in my head and try and give you ideas. So moving on to item number 2, and this was not discussed in anything with my farmers except for one woman, and it's just a drink that she enjoys, and I thought it was funny because it just made me a little perplexed, and I googled it right then and there because I didn't believe her. I said, no way. And it's champagne. Apparently there's going to be a food shortage of champagne, and turns out that is predicted. I don't need that to survive, but of course a lot of people like to indulge in it. Some people may think that you could use alcohol as a form of bartering in the event of an emergency. So I wanted to throw that on the list, but it's not something that's going to be on my list. Of course, I enjoy it from time to time, but champagne food shortage, yeah, I don't know why. There are many theories out there. I just wanted to throw that on the list in case anyone is going to throw that on this list today. Next up is wheat. We've been hearing about that a lot. We have talked about that a lot. I feel like it's been in every food shortage video I've done, but I still like to touch on it because there are many ways around it. There really are. Let's start out with number 1, the best one in my opinion, and that's growing it yourself. And I've thought about it. We barely have an acre here on my land. We live in a small town, but I don't think it would be wise for me to plant my own wheat because I would have to use majority of my land to get a fraction of what we need for the year. So if you plant your own wheat, that's awesome. We're going to move into something that I would plant instead, but wheat, a lot of people eat this, and again, there are a lot of theories as to why this is going to be a shortage. I know in my heart why, and unfortunately it is going to affect us here in the United States. It's just inevitable. It's no longer a prediction. It's just happening now. We like to store regular store-bought flour, $1.72 still at Walmart for the 5-pound bag. And we like to store unbleached flour in Mylar bags, 5-gallon buckets. You can just store it in air-sealed jars. Really, there's a lot that you can do with your flour to store it. I bring up Azure Standard a lot on this channel, and that's a great way to bulk buy your flour. That's a monthly order, so you could go ahead and place it now if you want to. I'm not affiliated with them. I just love the company. Of course, there are other places out there where you can get bulk flour like Sam's and Costco. I'm sure there's some websites that I'm forgetting about. You could go directly to your grain mills, which leads me to the conversation I had with my mill guy. I don't know what he would be called. He's a wheat farmer. So he is a farmer, but he also runs the mill. And what was intriguing is he is a 4th generation. So he's around my age, and I just felt like I could talk to him and really understand where he was coming from, because he, you know, grew up very similar to me, and he's in a similar situation as well. We are considered young in our generation to be having children, but it was just beautiful to see his children helping and running around. They're also a homeschool family, so big shout out to you, Jay and Kate. It was nice to meet you, and I know you watch the channel, so that was really cool. So what I saw there was not a very large operation, but it was mighty. It provides for several communities in my area, and we just got to talking, and he does have, you know, hundreds and hundreds of acres, and even then there are still going to be some shortages in every area. So he suggested stocking up. He agrees with me that wheat berries are a great alternative, and there are a lot that you can do with wheat berries. So I pick mine up from Azure, but you can, you know, you can get them on Amazon at this point. Sometimes I've heard rumored that Sam's Club has them. So you'll have to look into that as well if you have a Sam's Club around you. Perhaps some of you may have some places that you're thinking of. I got some wheat berries from Washington at one point, and I got some crap for getting them on Amazon, but buying directly from the source was totally out of my price range. And I love to support families, smaller, you know, farm families, but it was out of my price range. So whatever works for you, honestly, don't let the judgment of others crowd your decision to prep what you can. So anyways, wheat berries, there's a lot that you can do with them. Preferably, I would have a mill, but I don't, which is totally fine. There's a lot that you can find online to mill your own flour. Blender works just fine. You could even take a mortar and pestle and just grind it down if you wanted to. That would take a lot of arm work. I don't suggest doing it that way, but you totally can. You can also soak wheat berries overnight and just get them a little bit looser, and you can put them in soups. There's just like a lot of different things you can do with wheat berries. I know some of us can't consume wheat, so think of alternatives as well. We can consume wheat, but we have all the alternatives. We have dried garbanzo beans, and we make chickpea flour and turn that into brownies. I would suggest making something sweet with chickpea flour. That's just my taste preference, but it depends on yours. There's arrowroot flour, there's almond flour. I know a lot of diabetics in my life, and they prefer almond flour to certain flours, just so we're not spiking any sugar levels. But again, you have to research what's going to work for your family. Wheat has and will always be on the food shortage list or inflation list. I mean, we could really call it both at this point, because there's of course going to be shortages, or there is going to be a extreme cost when it comes to basic foods like flour. And that leads us to number 4 on the list, which is corn. And you know, it's been brought to my attention, not everyone can digest corn, but that's fine. I really enjoy corn. We use it a ton, and that's what I would grow in my garden. If there's going to be a shortage of corn, I'm going to grow corn in the garden, and I will try and grow enough for the year. I have grown corn twice, and it was not enough for the year, so I have a pretty good idea of how much we would need, but I use corn weekly for baking. We like to just eat it in general, keep it dry. There's a lot that you can do. I follow an account, Homegrown and Hand Gathered, I believe, on Instagram. I will link them, but they're amazing. They're living off the land right now in Pittsburgh. They live in the city, and they've been living off the land with everything that they have foraged, grown, hunted for. It's pretty amazing what they have been doing. So that's very inspiring. That is more of an extreme situation of what I'm talking about. But if we are without corn, Are we going to be able to survive? Yes. And I do like to say that about these food shortage lists. Are you going to be able to survive without butter, wheat, corn? Yes. But there are items that we use on the daily that involve these ingredients. I know a lot of the United States food involves corn oil, so you have to think about that as well if you're trying to buy your staples at the grocery store and they don't have corn oil to produce that staple. I myself choose not to eat any of those oils, but if you do, which it's found in a lot, I really suggest you look at your ingredient list when you're buying things from the grocery store, because it has really awoken me and showed me some ailments that I had in my everyday life and even my children's lives, and there are healthier swaps out there. I'm just going to tell it to you like it is. There really are some healthier options out there for you. So corn, yeah, that's a big one. I wanted to put that on the list. I know I said it last time, and I still got kickback on that. You know, why would you stock corn? Again, because we like it. So stock what you like. And these are just some things that I'm seeing in my local area. So maybe you won't see it, but this has been 6 farmers now that have told me there's going to be a shortage, and it's, you know, due to poor soil, drought, you know, layoffs, people that don't want to work. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into this, and there's a lot of theories that go into that as well. Number 5 on the list, I'm going to touch on it now, is going to be water. I don't think there is going to be an extreme shortage. I did a water storage tips video, emergency storage, and unfortunately it did not get that much attention, which I thought was funny because that was a really highly requested video. So if you have not already, definitely turn your notifications on for my videos. Perhaps you're missing some, but yeah, we did water and emergency storage tips. I always like to include water on food shortage lists just because I feel like it's important. So again, there's going to be a lot of different shortages, a lot of things that we need to stock up on, but I'm trying to focus on food related things and some things that I've talked about with my local farms. The next one, and this came from my bean farmer, and this is a different bean farmer if you were here for the last video, and that was green chilies. I'm not exactly sure why. So his own garden didn't produce, and then I asked him about the scale of his garden, and is it a home garden or is it, you know, hundreds of acres? And you know, it's a couple of acres of green chilies that just didn't do well. So it led me to my next farm. I said, how'd your peppers do? How'd your chilies do? Jalapenos, things like that. And typically in Colorado, those drier peppers is what I like to say. They do really well. Bell peppers, not so much. I think a few years ago, there was like a huge conspiracy because no one could grow bell peppers here in Colorado. I don't know why, but yes, green chilies. So that affects different things. That affects sauces, and that goes into crops. 75% of crops are made in California, and because of severe drought and soil issues and now an incredible amount of rain, you know, it can affect the growing season, and it's going to affect places that get their crop from California. Again, that number is 75% of our nation's vegetables come from California. So definitely look into that. I have not tried my hand with drying food. I have a dehydrator, so I've dehydrated it, but with the cost of like a freeze dryer, food dryer situation, it's just not worth it to me. But if you have that in the budget and you can start preserving some peppers now, I suggest doing it. It just depends on if your family eats them or not. We were lucky enough to have a great bounty in the garden, and then at the end of the season we found a ton on sale. So our freezer is stocked. I've grinded them into powders. I make homemade enchilada sauce with that, so we can some of it. I've made sriracha with that, so we always get chili pods whenever we go to Walmart or something like that. But any of the pepper varieties, I would suggest stocking up on that. 2 more on the list here, and then I will let you go for the day. I'm going to point out the obvious, and that is eggs. Eggs are not in a shortage right now, but I believe they will be. They definitely will be. If anything, it is an extremely inflated price. And the cheapest I have found is at Sam's Club. We like to get organic, free-range eggs. Cage-free doesn't mean anything except for they don't live in a cage. That doesn't mean they don't live in a box. Free range means they can go out and forage for things around the area, which can be good and bad. It depends on the circumstance. That all led me to get my own chickens, and that was about a year ago that this egg shortage inflation was predicted and it happened. So I am confident about the shortage predictions. I know a lot of people have doubts. I know a lot of people are, to be frank, naive and they don't want to think about it. I was that way. I get that. You want to remain positive. You want this not to happen, but in reality, if you are a realist, it is happening, and it was predicted and it is happening. So eggs are a great example of that. And unfortunately, to keep up, a lot of people have to move up their prices. We are not selling our eggs right now, but I'll tell you, I would sell my eggs for $6 for a dozen just to try and keep up with demand. If, my neighbor comes down the street and asks for a couple of eggs, of course, I will give it to them. But if I am looking at it from a business perspective, of course, I'm going to try and keep up with the competition. And that leads me to other types of eggs. We keep ducks, and ducks are a great source of protein, 9 grams of protein versus 6. You could keep quail eggs. Those are smaller eggs, so you would need maybe 3 to 4 to keep up with a chicken egg, but that's an option as well. And quails are great because you can keep them in a smaller area. Some can be a little bit loud. They are rather docile birds depending on, what personality you get, but quails are a great one to have. I've never kept them personally, but it's definitely something that I'm looking into. I love birds of any form. So I don't know. Yeah, that's an option. If you can't keep your own chickens, I totally get that. Cost up front combined with so many other factors does not make it worth it to me when it comes to saving money on eggs, but I love being around them. They give me great joy and I love taking care of them. And I also love knowing where my food is coming from. So I know what they're eating. I know that they're loved. I know they are well hydrated and cared for. So that makes me feel better. So it depends on if you want to keep chickens or not. I totally get that some people just think they're gross and they don't want to keep them, which is fine. So you don't have to do that. There are other alternatives. Again, the cheapest I've found, if you eat like we do, or at least similar to what we do, organic free-range eggs at Sam's Club are $6.99 right now. I believe they're $7.99 at Costco, and that's the 24 count. So I haven't seen this wild price increase, but again, we live in a smaller town of Colorado. We don't live in New York City. We don't live in California. So I'm not seeing that huge price that I see. Sometimes I see it's $12 for a dozen. I will tell you, I lived and thrived without eggs for a large portion of my life. So again, no, we don't need it, but a lot of people like it, and they're a great source of protein and other vitamins. Being in my 3rd pregnancy, I understand that now, and I do consume eggs. So it really just depends on who you are and what you like and what you stand for. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. If you need a egg substitute, again, you could find another source of eggs. Those might be harder to find. And I know quail eggs can be a little bit more expensive just because they're so unique. So that depends. I've seen those at Costco and Sam's Club as well. If you need them for baking though, you can substitute applesauce, oil. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many different things that you can substitute. I typically am going for a little bit of ground flax and water to make a flax egg. You can make a chia egg with chia seeds. The list goes on. Just Google an egg substitute and you're gonna find it, because there's a lot of different ways out there to substitute an egg. So I'm gonna throw that on there, the obvious one that a lot of people would have called me out for if I didn't put it on the list. And then something that goes along with it, I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to be an inflated cost, is going to be just poultry in general. The farm down the road, I had to double check these numbers because it was hard to believe. We live next to a huge chicken operation, not where I would get my eggs from, but they lost 5 million birds to the avian flu. So, and some of them had to be euthanized, but I've never been in that position. I don't know what I would do, but 5 million. I thought there was an error, but that's how many birds they lost. One more time, 5 million. Poultry is going to be a shortage. It's definitely going to be a shortage if you're not seeing it already. I'm definitely seeing it. I Haven't seen any inflated prices, but it's up to you. Again, Costco, Sam's Club, you can get that rotisserie chicken, and you can get that for $4.99, and you can get your chicken off of that for the week, use the bones and the rest of it to make some stock, and then go from there. There's a lot that you can do with a rotisserie chicken. If you don't feel like getting that, there's cans of chicken. But again, I would stock up now. You never know what's going to happen. Perhaps you can freeze that chicken. Perhaps you can purchase a pressure canner. They're really not that expensive, and you could pressure can your own cans of chicken. It's really up to you. There are a lot of options around that, but I did want to kind of combine that with the egg category. And then last but not least is olive oil, and I'm not really sure why, and that did not come from any of my local farms. I did find it on a list, a trusted list that I like to look at from time to time. So olive oil is a big one. I suggest looking into oils and what they can do to your health, your mental health, and so many other different things in your life. But if you're getting olive oil, just look for 100% pure olive oil. I have a discount code for an olive oil brand down in the description box below if you want to try that out. But if you want something more cost effective, just go to Target and find something that says 100% olive oil. There's so many different brands out there. Target has their percentages off. If you're a rewards member, you don't have to pay for that. You just sign up for it. Walmart, of course, is an option. If you are not a fan of olive oil, or if it's not at the store because of a shortage, or if it's an inflated price, go ahead and go for our avocado oil or coconut oil. I find that they have a high smoke point, but they bake well, they cook well, and I think it's a great healthy fat that every body needs. So it depends on your circumstance, but again, olive oil is going to be on that list. I'm not sure why. I have an inkling again, but we don't go into that anymore on the channel. So maybe some of you want to have a productive and positive conversation about that in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts on that. But sometimes I like to use it to make my own homemade mayo. But again, avocado oil works great for that too. So I did want to throw that in there. And then there was one more, and it doesn't affect us too deeply, and that's liquor and beer. And there are again a lot of factors, but if you want to stock up, go ahead and stock up now. I would suggest perhaps stocking up on the liquor, because beer is not going to keep that well. I worked in the brewery industry for a good majority of my life, so of course I would miss it, but is it necessary for a human to thrive? No, quite the opposite. So that's up to you. You can always look into making your own beer, making your own wine. We are 100% looking into that this season. We've made our own beer before, but we've never tried our hand at making our own wine. I'm not going to put it on my list in the description box or anything, but wine and liquor and beer are either going to be an inflated cost, which they are already, or they're going to be a shortage of. So it depends. I would stock up on your favorites. Of course, it's going to affect different areas of the world. And that is going to be it for this week's food shortage video. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing them weekly or monthly. I think monthly is more beneficial. That way I can just gather more. I feel like a lot of these are going to be repeated, but if more and more people see it, perhaps we can start getting prepping on the brain and seeing it as a positive for yourself or your family. I am going to head on out. Make sure you subscribe if you are new and your bell notifications are turned on so you don't miss any videos. I will leave my new channel link down below. I've been doing some other lifestyle related content over there. So if you want to subscribe over there, that would be super cool. As always, stay adventurous, stay creative, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye, everyone.